Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Title IX podcast on the Cyclone Fanatic Network. Looking a little bit different today. Still fueled by Cody Road. Still just absolutely obsessed with Ivy College of Business. But I do have Jamie Steyer Johnson here with me instead of Steph. Looks a little different for those of you watching on video. How you doing, Jamie?
Oh my gosh, I'm doing great. I am so excited to be on here with you again. We did an episode. It was a hot second ago now, but it was super fun. And I told you before we started recording, this is my third podcast in 3 days, but that's like very much a good thing because I was talking Iowa State women's basketball each time, and I could do that, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So
Yes. When Steph texted me this morning and she was like, "I'm still not feeling well." She is super under the weather. And she's like, "I'm still not feeling well. Do you think you could get Jamie or something?" And I was like, "Jamie and I have been trying to get together for weeks." Just like in person. And so yes, I can get Jamie to do this.
yes, easy yes, and it'll just be like a prelude to hopefully actually being able to see you later this week if the snow lets up and
Yes.
allows us out of our houses. But
Hopefully. I am on a little bit of a respite with the bakery, my full-time job, because everybody's on a diet right now for the new year. So I happen to be just like really slow right now in catching up with friends who thought that I disappeared during the holidays. Sorry about that. But I mentioned earlier, our podcast is sponsored by the Ivy College of Business. They are heading back to a very snowy campus very soon. I cannot believe how snowy it got. Probably 10 inches here. Did you get about that much?
yeah, it was terrible. And I mean, we only have like a single wide driveway, but our battery for our little like not quite snowblower, like kind of snow spitter died like
Yeah.
halfway through. I come in, my
Oh.
hands are like shaking so bad from using muscles I never use. And then Christian finished it out when the battery was recharged. So MVP
Oh.
to him, but I contributed.
I love that. I did probably like a half an hour of scooping, and because we needed to get our car out to get our giant, like intense monster Cadillac of a snowblower out. But I have to like shovel first, and then Arnold did a little bit, and then once I finally got it out, I we kind of made a deal, and I would much rather be outside in the snow, blowing snow, shoveling snow, than doing dishes. And he was like, "Well, I'll do the dishes then." And I was like, "Yes." So we got a
That's
great,
you just got to be able to work together sometimes,
yeah.
honestly. I my biggest thing is like I have Raynaud's, so like my hands start hurting real bad when they get cold. So I'm
Ooh,
like I got to be like a 15-20 minute stint, and then I'm right back inside. So,
yeah.
it was about efficiency today.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, we also are logging in at 8:30, just slightly after one of the most intense, insane ISU men's basketball games I've ever watched. We just beat number 2 Houston at Hilton Coliseum. Fran Fraschilla on the call. Absolutely love him. But I was so hyped up. I was so intense. I was sitting there with my son on my lap. He had his pajamas on. He's watching Bumbledums or whatever he's watching to before he goes to bed, because I was not going to read him a book because I was watching the game. Just sitting there, and my watch pops up, and I'll just read you what my watch said to me. Oh, I just got a text from my grandma. Shout out to my grandpa who had his last radiation treatment today. So, chemo, radiation, hopefully all done for them. But my watch, my grandma's probably texting me about the game. She's obsessed. High heart rate. Your heart rate rose above 120 BPM while you seem to be inactive for 10 minutes. Why why was my heart rate above 120 just watching the game?
Honestly, like that's kind of like way too standard for me. So it's a good thing my watch doesn't notify me for that.
I'm maybe I'm shocked that it's never notified me before, because that I was like, who's texting me? What is going on? And
Yeah.
then I was like, oh, it's just me. I'm the problem.
Yep. Yep. I have gotten those notifications once in a while, but like I don't have an Apple Watch, so mine gives me slightly different notifications, and it's like thought that I've started exercising or something when I'm calling a game. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
funny.
all right,
Yeah.
yeah, no, like we'll turn that one off. Let's
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes when I'm like rolling out cookie dough or something, it's like, "Are you working out?" And I'm like, "Yes, I
basically,
am.
yeah,
I am." So the game, super intense. Momchilovich hit a like
so
step
clutch.
back, crazy
Behind
turnaround
the backboard
jumper.
essentially. Like I
Yes.
literally had said in our group chat, I'm like, put the ball on the floor, get to the rim, force them to blow the
Yeah.
whistle. Like that seemed like the obvious move, which then they would have been trapping, they would have been poking at the ball, but like that seemed like the best way to get a shot down. And instead
Yeah.
you've got a freshman just like turning around, taking one of the toughest shots on the court you can take and
Yeah.
just knocking it down and then making the free throws too. Like,
Right. Right.
okay.
Oh my gosh, and honestly, like, the whole game, I've been kind of watching him, and he just was not asserting himself. He just was not. I mean, he made a couple threes, a couple clutch shots. He just was a lot of the game felt like he was just observing the game, and I think in general, he does tend to, like, take a little bit of mental time off during the games. He plays a lot of the game, so I get it,
Mhm.
you need a little bit of a break, but, a lot of the game and he didn't seem lost, he just didn't seem as engaged, and I don't think he's a very, like, passionate person. I don't think that not in a
Not like
bad way,
outwardly so,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, he's not easily shaken, but
Mhm.
he's also not easily, like, excited, and so I was just like I was begging for him to just get engaged and make a move, and then they drew up a play for him, probably like an ISO play for him, and the very last I mean, close to the last play of the game, second to last play of the game, and he makes that insane move that I was like, "Where like, this needs to be every 3 plays, you need to
Yeah,
be doing this."
yeah.
Like, every time down the court, you need to be thinking, "How can I make a move?"
And that's like the next step, right? Like where
Yeah.
that's what you're used to seeing from freshmen is like people, okay, they need a little bit of time to like
Yes.
adjust and learn, okay, this is what a good move is for me. This is like where that falls on how good it is for the team as a whole. And so like I respect not forcing it, but also at this point in the season, I think that he's like established himself well enough to say, okay, yeah, you need to be hunting it a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. So you and I were chatting just a little bit before the game, and you said that you saw some similarities between you're always, at the women's games, always either calling the games, doing color for the games, or you're um going to the games or watching them on TV. So you see almost every women's basketball game. You were saying you saw some similarities between this men's team and the women's team specific players. And so I want to hear a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
Yeah, it was really interesting because like you said, I'm there at every Iowa State game and then I watch obviously a lot of Big 12 as a whole, but I don't get the chance to like really sit down and fully engage with the men's games as much. Part of that is just like bandwidth where
Yeah.
I watch them very actively for better or worse. And so if I'm tired, if I'm a little burnt out, like I'll have it going, but it's hard to really process. So today I was like, all
Yeah.
right, no, like I'm locked in, this is a big game, and obviously they did a great job of keeping me locked in there. But it was really interesting because we were talking already about Momchilovich and just how he has such great capability. He's really versatile. He's got some good height to him. He could put the ball on the floor. He could shoot from outside, inside. He makes tough shots. And he's very comfortable doing that in the clutch. And so immediately, obviously, my thought is how Iowa State women's basketball has one of their own in Addie Brown. And so,
Yes.
it's really cool to see that particular parallel just because, having those kind of freshmen is not common in general. This year, for whatever reason, at least on the women's side, it is with this class that they've got coming in. But that is the very first one that I was watching. I was like, okay, Addie, I will say, we were talking about how we want him to establish himself maybe a little bit more, look for a shot a little bit more. Not really an issue Addie has. Like, she stepped on the court and she was
Right.
immediately like, I mean, she was told, you got to be looking for your shot. You got to be ready for basically
Mhm.
whatever comes your way. And so that's where it's like, okay, if we could get that to be extremely parallel, like if we could get Milan hunting it a little bit like Addie does, that would be great. But also you have them and they're like very capable scorers, but they're really good team players as well, where Addie will
Yeah.
pass up decent shots to get
Mhm.
even better ones too. So that was the very first one I thought of.
That's a good one. I'm like starting to put parallels together as I listen, and so I'm curious what some others. I wonder if there's maybe a Tame and Lipsy.
I'm gonna save Taman for
Okay, okay,
last
okay,
because
okay.
that's
Yeah, yeah,
a
yeah.
that's a two-parter. But the other one that as I'm watching, I immediately was like, okay, this is a big one, is kind of odd because it's not so much play style. It's much more vibes based, but I think of Rob Jones and I think of
Okay.
Nymir Dew because you've got the big rock
Okay.
energy. He is always going to be super engaged. He's always going to go out there and give 110%. And I will also say there's times where even if he doesn't have the best game, he's going to find a way to positively impact his team. If there's someone else who's having a really great game and he's on the bench more, he's going to stay
Yeah.
super engaged as well and be like the greatest cheerleader there. And that's something that Nye has like perfected, where she is like the biggest supporter, especially of the young ones. She adores the freshmen. She said early in the year in one of our post game interviews, when she had a great game and a couple of the freshmen had a really good game up at St. Thomas, she was like, yeah, ultimately, I don't really care what I'm doing. Like, if my job is to play good defense and to set up the other ones to have a good game, like I'd be thrilled with that. I'm super happy
Yeah.
with that. I just want them to be successful. And so she's one who just she is man, she gets so excited when it's not her, for everyone
Yeah.
else. And so that's where I was watching, like, okay, you have one of your older returners who's been around and
Mhm.
kind of knows what's going on. Isn't maybe going to be your leading scorer, can have really great games, but even if they're not having a great game, or maybe if they're more of a defensive player in that particular game, they're going to be like locked in, getting their team pumped up, getting the crowd pumped up.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Vibes are immaculate. I love it.
Exactly.
That's a
Exactly.
good one. Okay, what else do you have? This
Okay,
is
so
fun.
this, yeah, as I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, yeah, no, there definitely are, especially for two teams that really don't have similar play styles.
Yes.
I was surprised by how
Yes.
many I noticed as we were going of like, oh wait, no, like that's actually kind of similar to, someone else. So my last one is Taman, and I wrote one down, and then as I started thinking about it more, I was like, well, there's actually kind of two in different ways. And it's very obvious too, I think, based on uh the player I'm comparing him to. But for Taman, my first thought was Emily Ryan because, just
That was what I
super
was thinking.
composed, super composed, gonna have the game under control, gonna have the ball under control, is able to do so many things well. Is able to handle the ball, find teammates, get to the rim, score, shoot outside, really now can pretty much do it all. But as I was thinking about it more, the other person I thought of that actually might even be a better comparison is Ariana Jackson,
Okay.
because they're both local.
Yeah.
AJ's from Des Moines. Her
Yeah.
family is deeply embedded with Iowa State, just like Taman's is. And then when you think about their play style, you've got a couple of players who are undersized for, the level that they're playing at, but that doesn't let them that they don't let that stop them. And
Yeah.
they're still doing it all. You know, AJ, when she was in high school, she was the leading scorer, rebounder, assister. Like, I think she led her team in, I'm not exaggerating, every statistical category. And now
Yes.
she's coming here, and the thought was kind of, well, she'll take a little bit of time to adjust. She'll be a solid backup. You know, we'll kind of see, but like she's a great kid to have around the program, whatever. And all of a sudden, you know, obviously with Emily out, that changed things. But now Emily's back
Mhm.
playing, you know, 20 minutes a game, and still AJ's playing 30 plus minutes a game. You're playing her right alongside because she's knocking down shots from outside, but then
Yep.
she's also handling the ball, she's distributing. And so you know, just the composure and the control is very much Taman and Emily, I think, are similar. But then the more I thought about it, like Taman and AJ, very, very similar just in their ability to do so many things really well, and taking care of the ball, being aggressive on defense. Like AJ is a terrific on ball defender. Again, even with being a little bit undersized, you know, she's one that you
Mhm.
can really rely on getting up into people's grills. So
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
And that's a good one to hear because we all know that Taman, he was great last year. He's incredible last year, but didn't always look for his shot. And
Hmm.
so it's interesting to see that she is compared to like a more advanced version of Taman Lipsey. That gets you excited about, I mean, this freshman core for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, especially, yeah, seeing Taman like going out there, and I know like how hard he worked on his shot in the off season, and like,
Yeah.
you know, there's been so much discussed about that, but just knowing, okay, you, it's not like he's never been a good shooter before.
Right.
When you have like a severe injury in high school, yeah, things get a little bit messed up sometimes, but super hard worker, and so obviously he's elevated his game big time this year.
You know what? And this is a thing that it's a really random thing that I noticed about Taman today. So he did not shoot free throws well at the beginning. I think he went like 1 for 5 at the beginning.
Mhm.
And then there was just a moment where he kind of turned it around and said, "No,
Yeah.
I am a good free throw shooter. I'm going to hit these and hit free throws for the rest of the game in a game where there were a lot of free throws shot." And so it's always interesting to me because I took in college, I took like sports psychology classes, and the psychology of it all is always very interesting to me. It's very rare that somebody is having an off shooting night and they can turn it around and start to have a better shooting night. You know, if you're
Yes.
off, you're off. I think that that's the case also with free throws sometimes because it's mental. It starts to get into your head. And so tonight to watch Taman flip that, just decide to flip that switch was so cool to see and such a
Mhm.
like a nuanced thing to see him do. This has nothing to do with these comparisons, but when we just started talking about Taman and how much he worked to change himself from last year to this year, I also see so much like psychologically. I was like, what is that word? I
Yeah.
see so much in him psychologically different. And I see just a more like poised and a more confident and just, I mean, the way that he sees the court, the way that he sees, you know, where the passes are going to be quicker than everybody else. He seems to see the game happen just slightly before it actually happens. And so
Yeah.
that was cool to see. And it's cool to see that from him. I've become a huge Tame and Lipsy fan
Oh
this year,
yeah. I
especially.
mean, I've been such a big fan of Taman for a long time because I mean, I grew up in Ames. His oldest
Yeah.
sister is a year younger than me, so like I saw Taman running around in the Ames High gym when he was, you know, a couple years old, like when he was
Yeah.
real young. So it's just another in a long line of like, first of all, oh wait, you're how old? Like,
I know.
but beyond that, you know, it's just cool to see someone who is such a hard worker and who loves Ames. Like that's where you talk about, obviously there's so many things that go into Hilton magic. Like I tweeted about
Mhm.
when Sharp had a three that was like halfway down and then rimmed out, and then Trey Hayes comes
Yes.
down and cans his second of the season. I'm like, that's Hilton magic.
Yes.
But like also, it's being able to draw on it because you're the home team and you've grown up in this place. Not just that's where you play your college basketball, that's where you
Mhm.
like have grown up as a basketball player, as a basketball fan. And so for Taman to be like, okay, no, this is a huge game, this is a crazy environment, but like I still have that like kind of center, and being able to like take that breath, have that just kind of clean slate mentally and that confidence, and just go out there. And yeah, I mean, him making his free throws down the stretch was
Mhm.
crucial. Like, yeah, you want to make everyone, but if you're going to make them at any time, near the end of the game when it's close
Yeah,
is super important. So that
definitely.
is, it's super cool. I mean, and just like the development from year 1 to year 2, it's like, okay, very very mature beyond his years, which is kind of a theme in this program on both sides with the young ones right now.
Crazy, isn't it? And I just realized I went to Ames High and you went to Ames High and Taman went to Ames High. We're just Ames High peeps. Just
Yes.
Ames High, Ames High.
Yes, exactly. And look at us now. I mean,
Look at us now.
all really really uh
Wait, what is
doing,
this? Wait, what is
invested in
the
Iowa State basketball.
we have to do a Paul Rudd with Steph
Yeah.
out. Well, like, what
Hey,
is
look
it?
at us.
Hey,
Who
look
would
at
have
us.
ever thought?
Yeah,
Look at us
who would have
now. Who would have
thought?
ever thought? Who would have thought?
Yeah. We don't know what it is. We need Steph here to tell us what it is. Okay, I wanna turn a little bit. Oh, I just got a little message from forever ago that I'm buzzing a little bit. So sorry if the audio is a little wonky. Okay, I turned it down a little bit. So if I'm cray, guys, sorry about that. Sorry I buzzed at the beginning. But Jamie, I want to hear a little bit about what you're seeing in this women's team specifically, and kind of what you're seeing in the whole Big 12, because we talked about this with the volleyball team, the Big 12 being a gauntlet. I mean, it
Mhm.
doesn't let up for women's basketball at all.
No.
Also tough games. They've played tough games and they have some tough ones coming. And so I just want to get kind of your insights on the team and the conference as a whole.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, first of all, the kind of headline for this week is a huge week at home for the women. And you know, it does like grate on me a little bit because I'm obviously extremely sensitive to it when people don't specify men's basketball when they're talking about men's basketball. So all the people saying, tweeting, posting, whatever, oh, no more unbeatens left in college basketball. It's there's no unbeatens left in men's college basketball
Right. Then
because
say it.
there's still a handful of women's basketball teams that are unbeaten, and one of them, if they get past their game on Wednesday, is going to be in Hilton on Saturday in Baylor.
Mm,
And so that's really huge. You know, they're a top 5 team, they're undefeated, and there's a lot of potential there, but not to get ahead of myself because that is the second ranked opponent of the week for the women. West Virginia come to town on Wednesday. And so it'll really be interesting because West Virginia is fairly small, not super super deep. They've had some injuries, things like that, but they're a great team. Actually, they just had their first loss of the season this past week. So they were one of the undefeateds for quite a
yeah.
long time, and
Who
they're
did
in the
they lose
bowl.
to?
Texas.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Texas came into Morgantown and beat them. So they will certainly be hungry, which fortunately Iowa State gets to play a whole bunch of teams after a loss that they're unhappy about. So
Ooh,
they're getting to really go through the trial by fire. But no,
yeah.
it's very interesting. Yeah, they're smaller, but they're super aggressive. They pressure a lot. So Iowa State they've seen some pressure down the stretch, especially near the ends of these close games. But they're 3-0 in the Big 12, and they've all been close late. And so even if they've struggled with the pressure sometimes, ultimately they figured out a way through it. So that is certainly something that you can say, okay, well, when we come out with the win, even with that, even if you struggle sometimes, you have to see something in order to get better against it. So that'll be super exciting. And then Baylor is a team that, oh, they're very different from last year, kind of similar to Iowa State. They brought in a bunch of really high level players out of the portal. They had a couple that were hurt or not eligible last year that are playing again. And so they've got a tremendous amount of depth, a tremendous amount of talent. But the one thing they don't really have, which is crazy for a Baylor team, is height.
I was just gonna say bigs.
Yeah, they've got a freshman. Their lone freshman on the roster is 6'7", but she's very raw. She's really not playing
Really?
a whole lot right now. So their tallest player in their normal rotation is like maybe 6'2". So
Wow.
it's very different. And so the players they have are extremely talented. They've got really great guards. They have good post play, but just not tall post play. So, if you want to say, all right, well, where's your opportunities? Maybe that's one for Iowa State, because I'll kind of pivot here and talk about where Iowa State's been, which is doing pretty well. I've been impressed. I've been excited, obviously. Coming into the season, I said it was a lot of opportunity. That has been my key word for the year, has just been opportunity. I've said it on the broadcast a billion times. I've said it on the other podcasts I've been on this week a couple times too. So if you're, for whatever reason, following everything I'm on, first of all, thank you. Second of all, are you sure?
Shout out.
Third of all, I'm sorry. But opportunity. And so they've been up to the challenge this year. You've got a five-person class of freshmen that, at this point, when you look on the court and it's 5 freshmen playing consequential minutes in conference play, it often doesn't register. Like, usually it'd be,
Yeah.
they've got all the freshmen out there. I mean, in the past, it's been, they've got both if you have 2 that play a lot, let
Right.
alone an entire lineup. But this group has just, they put it together, and they're
No.
super mature, and I mean, they're impressive for a lot of reasons. And so it's been really exciting to see them go out, and especially in Big 12 play, go out and have close games against solid teams, and still come out with the win, especially 2 of them being on the road. BYU was a very different environment. That was wild. The crowd really gets into it, and especially for Iowa State, where you usually have a ton of fans, really well attended, really well traveled. You've got people kind of spread out all over, especially, you get into places that are further from Ames, down in Texas, things like that. Well, you have all sorts of families of players. You have grads down there.
Yeah.
Not so much the case in Utah. So there was
Yeah.
a very dedicated 4-person contingent of like friends of one of the managers and some players. But beyond that, you're in a super hostile environment. So that's very different for Iowa State. And so
Yeah.
to all that, to still come out with the win is frankly crazy. Addie Brown just won her first Freshman of the Week, which is, she's a victim of her own consistency.
I cannot believe that this is her first.
She is top 2 in the conference, in my opinion, as far as resume for Freshman of the Year. And
Yeah.
that's her first one. But it's
Yeah.
because she's really doing the same things week in and week out, but she hasn't had those like huge flashy games as much. And so
Yeah.
where someone else maybe gets rewarded for having 25 points or, something like that, it's Addie's just doing okay. She's going to give you like 18 and 12, which for most people is like, yeah, that's pretty impressive. 18, 12, and 5 probably, since she's
Right.
also, dishing out assists left and right. But finally got rewarded for that. So that's super exciting. And then you've got Audie Crooks has won a couple of them as well. 3 of the last
You
4
know,
have
I'm the
gone to a
president of her
cycle.
fan club.
I know. Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, you and I went and watched her in the high school sleeper event
Yeah,
last year.
we
We've been talking
did.
about her, like, I mean, even
Mhm.
before she committed, and just continues to be so dedicated and work so hard. And just, I mean, I one of my favorite moments of the season so far was sitting and interviewing her after the win at Oklahoma State, because that was a really big test for her, knowing, okay, you're going up in conference play against a player that can physically match you in Hannah
Yeah.
Gusters, where she has a little bit of height, but physically she's fairly strong. So you're gonna be able to compete against someone when, okay, everyone wants to dismiss what Audie accomplishes, whether it
Mhm.
be in high school because, oh, you play 1A, or in club because you played for a smaller club, like all that, ignoring that they were throwing 3 4 people at her regularly. We won't even get
Right.
into all that, but this
Right.
isn't new to her. But for her to go up against Gusters, and to really play well there, and to be such a key part in why Iowa State won that on the road, was huge. And then we're sitting there, and a man comes up as we're talking, and she kind of looks up and like smiles, and he's like taking a picture, and then he kind of waits around, and it's, I mean, he's decked out in Oklahoma State stuff. And then I finish our interview and I'm like, well, I'll let you go because I think we've got some Oklahoma State fans who are wanting to take pictures with you. And she kind of laughs and she's like, oh, yeah. And then we finish the interview, we go to commercial, and she like gets up, and he's like, and I'm like, Audie, I wasn't kidding. Like, he wants a picture with you. And so she like went out, took the picture, and it's just like, people are recognizing it. And you
Yeah.
see at Hilton, the kids are waiting around. That's always been kind of the case, but especially now, you've got these local kids, and they're excited, and people are really buying in. God, Ariana Jackson in conference play, leading the league in percentage, second in 3 pointers per game. She's 11 for 15 over 3 games.
Oh
Like,
my
I've been
god.
telling people she's a great shooter. She just needed to get her feet under her. I think it's a little
Yeah.
bit tough when you get thrown into the situation she was to start the year, but she came back from
Yes.
break, and it's like, kind of like you talked about with Taman wiping the slate clean on free throws. Like, that's what Christmas break was for AJ and shooting.
Mhm.
And she came back, and she's, I mean, she's had 2 games that would be worthy of freshman of the week if they would have been in the same. And then she had a sandwiched in between them a game where she didn't score a whole lot. And so they weren't
Yeah.
in the same week. So if they would have been in the same week, it would have been bar none. Like, she would have gotten it, and it wouldn't have been close. But I mean, I could just sit here and like go down the roster and talk about how great they've been. But like, especially, I talked about Nye and her similarities with Rob, of just like the energy she brings and stuff. And she's had a couple of tough shooting games here in conference, but like, she just stays so engaged. She stays so excited. She plays terrific defense. So I want to give her like a ton of props for that. Especially because we've got Emily Ryan back for 20-ish minutes a game, which is huge, 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 huge. But it's not, the whole weight of the world can't be on Emily's shoulders, and it's not. And so Nia
Yeah.
is still making sure, it's not like, oh, well, now it's Emily's team and I'm just going to sit here and like not really care. Like, that's not who she is. That's not her
Yeah.
attitude at all. So she's been so, I mean, it's really, what's crazy is that like everyone has taken such big strides. It's not like, oh, there's certain players that are separating themselves. Like, no, everyone is kind of like hand in hand walking together through the season, because Hannah Bellinger just had her best game of the season. Isnel Nadabu's had some great games. Like, she's bringing great energy off the bench. She's bringing some
Mhm.
points. Like, it's I I've never seen anything like it in the time I've watched any basketball, let alone at Iowa State. And so I will say that's why I think it's so exciting to see other people recognizing it. Like, last week's crowd against Kansas was amazing. And so I'm just so excited for this
Well,
week.
I know that you can't use Twitter or X, whatever, Twitter as a measuring stick for anything these days. But I do feel like there is so much support on Twitter with, Cyclone Twitter is crazy. We're crazy. We're psycho. We will make you viral. Um, but just the support of women's basketball on the Twitter machine is so cool. So
Mhm.
awesome. It's so
Yeah.
exciting.
It really well, and I mean that, and then I'm someone who's very tapped in nationally with general women's basketball stuff. And
Yeah.
people who are really into women's basketball are noticing this team for what
Mm.
they're doing with what the expectations were and with how different the roster is and with how young it is and also how fun they are to watch, because this is as fun of a brand of basketball as there really is. They pass the ball, they make shots, they rebound, like the hustle plays, and so it's all the little things that come together, and they're balanced. It's always different people doing the scoring. So it's just like
Mhm.
it's a really exciting time where you have this future that is very, very clearly bright. Like from the start, that was evident where, yeah, these are players that are going to really go places, but plot twist, like you're not saying, well, just wait. It's I know they're developing right before your eyes, and they're very much right there in the race. They're, one of four teams that are undefeated in conference. They match up fairly well with teams, and every time they step on the court, I genuinely believe they've got a shot. Like that's not to say they're going undefeated. Like that's I'm not calling that shot, but there's
Right.
not a team that's like, oh, they're tailor made to exploit
Yeah.
our deficiencies or our struggles, or we simply cannot match up with this player. Like they're
Yeah.
balanced, they play a lot of people, and they're confident, and so that really goes a long ways.
Yeah. I love this. I feel like we could talk about women's basketball. We could talk about Iowa State women's basketball specifically for like the whole night. But we do have to take a break. And after our break, I just want to tell you a few fun things about women's sports. Steph and I like to do this a little bit. We just pick a few news stories. We call them shoutouts. Just a short little, I don't know if you know about this, but let me tell you about it. So, we're going to take a break. We are here in the Wild Rose Casino and Resort studio. And I just want to know if you guys remember what we talk about in every podcast, and that is Hopewood JD Will in a Day program. If you do not have a will, make it your New Year's resolution to just go get your will done. Just make sure it's done. Can you imagine a Hawkeye getting your money? I mean, Jamie can imagine a Hawkeye getting her money. Can you imagine a Baylor fan getting your money
Not
after
that.
you die? We cannot allow that to happen. So go and make sure that you know where your money, where your stuff is going. If the worst thing in the world happens, we're not even going to say it, but Fanatics get a $50 off with the code Fanatic Hopewood JD Will in a Day program. Check her out, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. It is Alisa Woods here. I don't know if I said that at the beginning. Do you guys know it's me? It's Alisa. Just the OG. Alisa here. And I'm here with Jamie Steyer Johnson, one of my favorites. And she's filling in with First Steph, who is under the weather today. Under the weather on maybe the best day to be under the weather, really, because the city sort of shut down. But
Yeah.
we're wishing her the
The
best if
city
you're
is under
listening.
the weather, as in
Right.
under a foot of snow.
Right. Right. So, Steph, we hope that you are healthy and back in a couple weeks when we record again. I'm sure you will be. But Jamie is doing a great job of filling in. So, Jamie, I want to tell you a few fun things. I feel like I don't get to be as fun when I'm sort of like leading the charge here. When Steph's in charge, I just make funny jokes through the whole podcast.
That's how I am. That's why I'm the vibe queen at the 1012 network.
I love it. Okay. All posts. What do we have here? First of all, let's start on a bummer so we can end on some highs. A captain of the Matildas, Sam Kerr, Australian soccer player, got a ruptured ACL this week, and so she is going to be sitting out for an extended amount of time, and that is a huge bummer because she is one of the best players in the world, one of the best women's soccer players in the world. ACL tear, that's such a bummer. Do you watch it? Do you watch soccer ever?
I mostly don't. It's a lot for me. I've tried and I do on occasion.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to process. But like especially just right now, it feels like we're inundated with severe injuries, especially in women's sports, and
Yeah.
that's will probably be a battle for a long time for reasons that like I don't even have the time to get into. But it's really sad just that there needs to be infrastructure, there needs to be a focus put on the health and well-being of female athletes, like athletes as a whole obviously, but we all know that that gets kind of shoved to the back burner for women a lot of the time. So it's just like it's hard. I've had it like so many injuries in women's basketball in college this year. Like it's it seriously like makes me sick in the pit of my stomach. It is horrific.
Yeah, so I love Sam Kerr. I think she's a great player. And I'm really bummed that she got injured. I saw when it happened, I saw some rumblings and I was like, please let it just be. I don't even want to say high ankle sprain because that's still like a fairly serious thing. But I was
Yeah,
like, let it just be a couple weeks. But
right.
super bummer. We wish her the best. I'm sure she's listening. Uh But, another thing that popped up for me probably at this point yesterday, Stanford women basketball coach Tara Vanderveer, blah, 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 those Pella names, they get me. But she had her 1,200th career win, and she's now 3 wins away from passing Coach K,
Hmm.
who has 1,202 to become the winningest coach in college basketball history
Yeah, dude,
across the
Tara's
board.
she's unreal. Like, I mean, her longevity at Stanford has been crazy.
Yeah.
She's a legend. Like, I mean, and then you think about like the players that she's coached in her time. Like, I
Yeah.
haven't seen Stanford live very many times, but one of the times that Iowa State faced them was in the NCAA tournament. And boy, that was a solid Iowa State team. They got they got cooked. Jane
Yeah.
Tell dropped almost 50 on it. It was unreal. But like you at that point you just got to be like, "Dang, that's a good player. That's a good team." Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, Tara like she's been leading the charge for decades on making sure okay, women's sports, they need to be respected. Like I know she's been talking a lot this week about the logistics for what things are going to look like for those couple of teams going from the Pac-12 to the ACC for next year, because that's obviously a huge concern for travel and things like that. And so it's like, yeah, she's about to be the winningest coach in college basketball history, but also she really cares about like the well-being of the sport,
Hmm.
the well-being of everyone involved. And so I just think that's super dope.
And I was so worried about getting her last name right that I got her first name wrong. Hannah Hidalgo joined. Oh no, I can't read. Caitlin Clark, Markel Fultz, and Sheila Lamberg as the fourth D1 player to average 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in their first 10 career games. And then it says she did it in 9. How do you do it in 9 with an average?
So
She has
basic like the other ones had at some point like a really big game that like brought it up or something.
Gotcha.
But and then she also did it averaging, I mean, at one point it was 6 steals.
Yeah,
I think through 10
6.1
games it was
steals.
also 6 steals. Yeah.
She's
It is
23.6, 5.9 rebounds,
yes.
5.8 assists, and 6.1 steals.
Yeah. 6 steals. I mean, no one else did that. No one does that
No.
point blank period. She is unreal. She's
And
unreal.
yeah,
And a freshman, just
and a
part of
freshman.
that huge group of freshmen. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, the national awards, if you think that they've been topics of conversation for the past couple of years. Just, I mean, think for the next few after that. Think of freshman of the year this year. Like, I mean, she's competing for fresh or for player of the year in the ACC alongside freshman of the year. Like,
Yeah.
I can't. It's
Oh.
unreal.
And
As a
she
very slow person, I just
and
it
she's
gets
at
me.
Notre Dame, and it just tells you, I keep saying this, there is so much parity in women's sports. I felt like if you were to ask me probably 5, 8 years ago, I would have said, like, women's basketball is so top heavy,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
how is it ever going to change? And I feel like it has changed. I mean, Notre Dame, historically a great team, but we're just talking about so many different teams at this
Well,
point.
and the reason why it's changed, a lot of it has to do with players making a concerted effort and making a decision and
Yeah.
saying, "You know what? I don't know if I'm going to be competing for a national title right away, but they believe that I have the talent. I'm going to attract enough talent around me that we're going to build something here." And it's happened on a national scale where they go places that the culture is right, that it means something to them. You know, for instance, I just saw one of the top players in next year's class, Kiyomi McMiller, just committed to Rutgers, who is historically
Yeah.
a very prominent program, has a very special place in history, but has really been struggling as of late, especially since C. Vivian Stringer retired. And so she made that decision and she looked at it and she said, "No, I'm not worried about this year. I'm not worried about last year. I'm worried about, you know, who's there and what we can build." And that's just been happening across the board. It's not okay, your top players are going to go to UConn, South Carolina, or, you know, Notre Dame, or, you know, Texas or whatever, depending on what part of the country they're in. There's going to be
Yeah.
their other two options. Now it's like, no, they're going to go where they want to go. That's Addie Brown has said, "I came to Iowa State because I knew that they were going to push me, and I knew that I was going to be coached the way I want to be coached, and I knew that I was going to have the opportunity to play a lot of different roles in a lot of different
Mhm.
positions. I wasn't going to be stuck into one box." And true to form, you know, she's played every position on the court already and contributed. And that's just been on a huge scale.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so my last little thing is an amalgamation of a bunch of little things because I read this on, it was posted 3 days ago from Front Office Sports on, looks like they posted on Twitter. And in the past month in women's sports, we have had the professional women's hockey team launch and set attendance record, which I'm like, how do you set an attendance record if you just launched? But you know what? Go off. I'll let them have that
I think it's like
attendance record.
all women's hockey in like
Okay.
including past leagues.
Okay. I'll accept that. Gatorade signed Caitlin Clark. Thorns set a national women's soccer league record, 65 million. Sell for 65 million. So the Thorns were sold for 65 million. That is a record. Okay, I understand that. Pro Volleyball Federation first draft, which I think is so exciting. I feel like volleyball has always been one of those things that I would love to watch the next level of. And I really, really like watching Olympic volleyball, indoor volleyball. Love watching sand volleyball. It like must see TV for me
Mm-hmm.
when there's Olympic volleyball. So I'm very excited about that and very excited to hopefully see
We
that.
should make a road trip to Omaha.
Oh, that'd be fun. I love Omaha too. Okay, the WNBA announced their 40-game schedule. Maria Sanchez signs her record deal for the NWSL. The Pro Volleyball Federation signed with CBS.
Mm-hmm.
That is where they're going to be airing a lot of those games. NCAA volleyball title sets a viewership record. We saw that one coming. NCAA sets 2 volleyball attendance records. See, people love volleyball. We want to watch the next level. And then this last one is one that I'm going to leave us a little bit on a cliffhanger because we want to hear from Steph what she thinks of this contract, because this is something that Steph has been talking about for years, wanting the NCAA to write a new contract for the women's March Madness. And they wrote a new contract, but I am not sure that it means what a lot of people think that it means. They got a record valuation. That is not hard to do, because in the past they have been severely undervalued, and I am afraid that they are still undervalued. But I just want to leave this on a little bit of a cliffhanger, because I know that Steph has some things to say about that. Yes, it happened in the last month. Yes, it's women's sports. Yes, some people are excited about it, but I would like to hear what Steph has to say about it as a lawyer, as a women's sports fan, and just as my other co-host of the podcast. So that's where I'm going to leave us. We always say, let's keep this short. We always go super long, and I'm not sorry about it, because I love having Jamie on and I love seeing her face and hearing her point of view on women's sports, because it's insane and so good. So thank you, Jamie, for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me in my giant full length blanket.
Oh, is that a Snuggie?
It goes past my knees.
Okay,
It
Jamie.
was a Christmas gift. I try not to take it off. I might not take it off before the game tomorrow. I might roll up wearing this with how cold it's supposed to be.
Jamie, you look like Handmaid's Tale right now.
Oh, don't like that. Don't like that at all. Really cozy. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I love being able to talk women's sports, being able to talk cyclone sports, and it seriously, it could not have worked out better with the thoughts I was having during the game. I teased it on Twitter a little bit. I said,
I love it.
If only I had somewhere I could talk about this. And then I had people like, oh, yeah, like tweet it. I'm like, no, sorry, this is a tease. You just don't know it yet.
I love it. So speaking of Twitter, tell us everywhere we can find you.
You can find me on every social platform. I'm at JSteyz, JSTEYZ. And then you can listen to me on the 1012 podcast weekly. And you can find our broadcast. I am the analyst for Iowa State women's basketball. And all of those can be found on the Varsity Network app, or on cyclones.com, or when it's not in direct conflict with the men's game like it was last week, on hard. Your local Cyclone affiliate radio station.
I love it. I love it. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks to the Ivy College of Business, as always, for being our sponsor. And now, Jamie, you have to say go Cyclones.
Go Cyclones.
Go State.